All right. You guys ready to finish strong after a great day? Okay. So I have been asked to take us on a little journey to end the conference in the pursuit of higher ground. And I want to emphasize, Robert's here, I'm so glad you are here to talk about the difference between a noun and a verb. And a noun is static and a verb is dynamic. It moves. We're going to go into this pursuit as the verb, the pursuing of something beyond where we are right now. And to provide us a little bit of context, I'm going to go ahead and have you look at this image. I'd like you to notice what's happening inside of you right now. What words would you use to describe? You can just throw them out. What words would describe how you're feeling looking at this image right now? Okay? Yeah. Division, right? Sad, okay? Confronting, hopeless. This is unfortunately where our country is right now, and where many would say the West is. I was just in London at a conference a couple weeks ago with leaders. I took a delegation of American leaders with leaders from 95 countries, 4,000 leaders, talking about hyperpolarization. Not just polarization, hyperpolarization. In 2020, George Floyd's name was mentioned by Robert. May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered, and the ground beneath my feet shook. I did not know how to make sense of what was going on. Raise your hand if you can relate with that statement. I just didn't know how to process it. I was unbelievably confused, emotional, distraught. And most of my friends in my neighborhood, my neighbors, were not having the experience I was having. And I realized, looking back on a quote from the great management guru Tom Peters, he wrote a book called In Search of Excellence. He said many years ago, if you're not confused, you're not paying attention. If you're not confused, you're not paying attention. I was paying attention, and I was really confused. My neighbors, my friends weren't paying attention. And to them, they're like, Rand, what's going on? Why are you so destabilized? And so we're going to go on a journey to understand the root cause of this. This polarization, this division. How many people watched the president's address to Congress a couple days ago? Okay, just another example of this, right? We think it's about gender issues. We think it's about race. We think it's about income inequality. I'm going to propose that those are all downstream of the real root cause. Those are the symptoms. And what I really want to do is take us upstream. And if there's a pair of glasses on the screen, and these glasses represent the idea metaphorically of how all of us, regardless of what side we're on in this sort of division, we make sense of the world through our worldview. Like someone who's wearing glasses and they're filtering everything through the lens that they're wearing. We are interpreting what's happening in the news, what's happening in our communities, what's happening in our country, what's happening in our world. We are making sense, making meaning of that through our worldview. There's a saying that some of you are familiar with. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so I'm looking at the world. I'm looking at a situation, and I'm making sense of it. And I might be assuming that everyone is making sense of that situation in the same way. But what if we were all interpreting it in incredibly different ways? And this is intended to challenge us to be more sophisticated, more nuanced in how we relate with what's going on from a polarization standpoint. I'm going to give you 3 oversimplified worldviews. This is oversimplified for the interest of today's topic, but I believe it will make the point. And I'm going to touch into the 3 primary worldviews that exist in the United States and large parts of Europe. And the first one is the achiever worldview. This is the worldview, this is the consciousness, the way that one makes meaning that's about achievement. It's very rational, it's often secular, it's very merit-based, and there are expressions of the achiever worldview that are wildly positive. Economic prosperity, which Robert talked about. The modern medicine, healthcare, extension of life, decrease in infant mortality. This is modernity at its best. You guys get that? This is modernity at its best. The light. But where there is light, there is also shadow. Where there is light, there is shadow. The shadow of the achiever worldview, this is where capitalism was born, by the way, is greed, self-dealing, cronyism, regulatory capture. Regulatory capture is when the government agencies that are regulating capitalists hire, those capitalists hire those regulators after they retire to come and work for them and sit on their boards and get paid millions of dollars a year. There's a corruption in the shadow of capitalism. But let's not say capitalism is corrupt. Let's say that the shadow of capitalism is corrupt. Next worldview, on your right, the traditional worldview, sometimes called the conservative worldview. This is the traditionalist. And where the traditionalists sit, there's light. And there are wonderful things that come from the traditional worldview, like family values, like patriotism, like law and order. And where there's light, there's shadow. And the shadow of the traditional worldview includes things like bigotry, things like being anti-science. It's nothing about the shadow of the achiever or the traditionalist is something I'm drawn to. I'm just sober to the reality that it's there. I'm drawn to the light. And then lastly, on the left, the progressive worldview. The progressive worldview has an incredible light, just like the other two. And what I love about the progressive worldview is its sensitivity to our climate, to the environment, a recognition of the previously marginalized communities in our country in particular, and the implications of that. This is a very sensitive worldview. However, there's also a shadow. And some of the shadows that we're all familiar with, on all three of these, on the progressive side, would be cancel culture. Would also be, unfortunately, anti-capitalistic orientations. This idea that capitalism is bad, that capitalism is the enemy. That would be a shadow of progressivism. So holding all of this and starting to ask yourself, where do you resonate? You might say, well, I'm not necessarily able to pick just one. Maybe it's you have a resonance with the light of two of these worldviews. When we do research at the Stagen Leadership Academy, we work with thousands of leaders every year for decades of doing this work, so we see patterns. What we find is that when most people are really being honest with themselves and really being honest in a more intimate, high-trust conversation with one of our psychologists or one of our faculty members, they will admit to us that this is a really hard place to live and that what they really want to do is just do this. They want to find the worldview that's the closest worldview that resonates with them. They want to hit the easy button and they want to subordinate themselves. They want to surrender because it's hard work. It's hard work to stay above all of this. And so pick your channel, literally pick your channel. Pick your social media channel, pick your news channel. Is it going to be, well, I'm a little bit more on the traditionalist side and Fox is just even though I don't agree with everything, that's sort of the closest thing. Somebody else might say MSNBC is what I'm going to go to on the progressive side. Someone else might say, I'm really drawn to people who are much more scientific and much more hyper-rational, like Sam Harris. Does anyone know Sam Harris's name? He's a podcaster. He's a neuroscientist. He's got a very popular podcast, and that's a little bit more of the achiever, a little bit more of the rationalist, a little bit more of the modernist. And so, unfortunately, if we all, as Americans, and let's talk about America from this point forward, if we simply hit the easy button and give up our own agency, this is not going to actually get us out of this hot mess. We have to move beyond the polarization. And so, why is this so hard? I want you to imagine that I'm in the traditionalist camp, and I am listening to Fox News, and I'm listening to Breitbart, and I'm listening to Tucker Carlson, I'm listening to all these, I'm listening to Ben Shapiro, and Ben Shapiro is very good at what I'm about to say. He's a very talented at what he does as a communicator. When Ben points out the progressives, what does he emphasize? What is he putting my attention on as I'm listening to someone in the traditionalist camp? What is he focusing on? The shadow. And so what begins to happen after thousands and tens of thousands of reinforcements is I start to see the other as the shadow. And it becomes a way of dehumanizing the other. Now let's go over here. I'm in the progressive camp. CNN it's not the most extreme, but it's there. And what is CNN going to say about MAGA and about that world? What are they going to point to? The shadow. So we're going to see over here the worst in the other on that side. And we could do it for the achiever too. For the interest of time, I'm just going to do these two polls. This is not going to get us to a productive place. But the achievers sit in the middle, those that own the media companies and those that own the social media outlets, and it's called the economics of outrage. They make money because of this culture war that's happening. Do you guys get this? Like, this is where we are. It is a very, very complex and confusing place for us to live as a society, because the incentives drive behavior. Okay? Good intentions, okay. Incentives drive behavior. Money drives behavior. And so we are incentivized at a media level to create this hatred of the other, which we're really amplifying the shadow. So people ask me, Rand, what are you? Okay? Well, if you asked my 17-year-old teenage daughter what I was, she'd say I'm a right-wing nut job conservative. That's what she would say. And she's got an AOC poster in her room. Okay, it's awesome. Now, if you go over here and talk to some of my clients who are CEOs, knowing that our organization teaches meditation and mindfulness, they'd say I'm a tree-hugging California guy. The answer is, Rand, are you a traditionalist? Not merely. Rand, are you an achiever? Well, not merely. Rand, are you a progressive? Not merely. I am attempting to be the best of all three of these in myself. This is my pursuit. I have not arrived there. This is my pursuit. The pursuit of something bigger. And then we'll be asked, why can't we just find common ground? How many people would like to find common ground in our culture war? Okay? We all want to find common ground. The difficulty of the pursuit of common ground is that common ground is necessary, but it's not sufficient. We need to actually find common ground, not in leftist values, not in conservative values, but in American values. We need to find our feet in common ground. And then from common ground, instead of being over here and standing for here and standing against that, and being over here and standing for this and standing against that, we need to actually find common ground to stand for the rediscovery of our values as a country that will allow us to then recognize what the limitations are of our past so that we can actually progress and evolve to higher ground. Higher ground. This is the move. So what does higher ground look like? Higher ground looks like this. We take the best of all of them, and we take an attitude of trying to minimize the worst of all of them. So we want to minimize the shadow of all three, and we want to move with the best and the healthiest dimensions of all three to higher ground. This is the work ahead. This work is incredibly emergent. And what I mean by emergent is people are going to ask me at the cocktail party. My flight just got delayed 3 times back to Dallas, so I'll be at the cocktail party. And you guys are going to come up to me and say, Rand, that higher ground is really intriguing. Can you show companies, can you show leaders who are illustrating, who are exemplars of higher ground? And my answer is no, because they haven't yet been built. The leaders don't exist. The companies have not yet been built because we haven't needed them yet. This is an evolutionary moment. The reason that at Conscious Capitalism, our purpose is to elevate humanity through business. That's the purpose of Conscious Capitalism, to elevate humanity through business. This move is a move of elevation. Jay talked about the idea of transformation and abundance. I would call that a transcendent energy, to transcend our current level, to transcend the idealistic and naive belief that common ground is going to take us where we need to go, and to actually realize we need common ground and then we need to move, because that will be foundational, to higher ground. This is spiritual work. This is spiritual work. I'm not saying this is religious work. If one believes that spirituality is simply a feeling that I'm a part of something bigger, JD talked about this, I'm a part of something bigger than myself. I'm not just this ego trying to convince me of my separation, but I am a part of something bigger. That's my definition for spirituality. We need to move to a bigger, to an upward and outward orientation, to a higher and more complex place, to higher ground. There is a beautiful move here, and people will often say, this is silly. Rand, you're suggesting that I give up my judgment of other people, because there are people, there are things, there are camps, there are groups that do bad things. Yes, they do. When you are at the current level of our current polarization, we are in judgment, and we are being judgmental, and it's being fostered by the media and by social media. But when we move to higher ground, we actually become discerning. And I want to make a distinction between being judgmental at one level and being discerning at another level. When we have discernment, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and conflate the shadow of the human being with the human being. I loved what Robert said about the DEI of illusion. Because when I talk to people who are my friends in the progressive camp, where did the DEI movement begin? What camp? Which of these camps? The progressive camp, the DEI community, the DEI movement came from the progressive consciousness, and it's wonderful because it has light. The shadow is when I talk to them and I say, you stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion. What about, and this was 4 or 5 years ago when I had this first series of conversations, I said, what about the 70 million Americans who voted for Trump? Okay? And they're like, well, no, they're not included. And I'm like, oh, so the inclusion is conditional upon them having the same worldview as you. And what I want to invite all of us into at higher ground is what I call unconditional inclusion. There are no conditions for you as a human being to be included, but there are consequences for shadowy behavior, and as a social contract with law and order and with the rule of law, you will be dealing with consequences if you behave in ways that are a danger to yourself or a danger to society. This is a fierce, discerning orientation. I'm Catholic, and Pope John Paul was shot. You guys remember? Some of you are old enough to remember. And he almost died. And his would-be assassin was caught and was jailed. After the Pope had healed, many months later, he went into the jail cell of his would-be assassin on the cover of Life magazine, very famous picture, and he sat knee to knee with no handcuffs on the would-be assassin, and he forgave him. This is love, right, Jay? This is love. He forgave him. When he forgave him, he did not go to the jailers and say, now that I have forgiven him, let him out of jail. He included him in humanity, and he said he needs to stay in prison because there needs to be consequences for his shadowy behavior, but I'm not throwing out the human being. We cannot throw human beings out and continue to dehumanize one another and expect that we're going to evolve to a place that is going to be foundational to the future for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren who haven't even been born yet. You guys there? Okay. So, I've never done this before, but I'm gonna go to part 2 of the movie, because Jay's like, Rand, the higher ground speech was great, but there's another part that was a totally different speech, so I'm gonna weave them together, and I'm gonna end with the brilliance of the founding principles of our country that was moving through the founders, okay? I think it was moving through them. And here it is. E pluribus unum, our motto. And this motto is out of many, one. We are an experiment. We are a verb. We are simply nothing more than this country trying to find itself, coming up on our 250th anniversary next year, trying to find ourselves. But we've always had an essence of recognizing the importance of diversity. Diversity in all kinds of ways, outside diversity and diversity of viewpoints. And so what the Do More Good movement recognizes is that with these principles of higher ground in the back of all of this, and the values and the vision and the mission and the purpose that Jay so beautifully unpacked for us throughout the day, this is a big tent. You guys get this? This is a big tent. And a big tent has tent poles. And there's 3 tent poles I want to unpack for you. One of them is diversity. Right? Diversity in the Do More Good movement is very important. We also have a tent pole of freedom. And we have a tent pole of dynamic tension. And so let's look at this first tent pole of diversity. In the room, look around, literally look around. There are people in here who appear from the outside to be different. We have black and white in this tent and online and in the community outside of this gathering. We have Hispanic and Asian. We have indigenous and multicultural. We have Democrat and Republican. I can't go to a lot of conferences and actually say this. I can go to a conference and say, oh, most people are Democrat. Well, most people are Republican. But what's so beautiful about our community is that we have this diversity. What about people who are anti-Trump and pro-Trump? You may not admit it, but in this room, there are people who are huge Trump supporters physically in this room, and there are people in this room who have a deep, deep concern and anger and judgment for Trump. Welcome to a big tent. What are you going to do with it? We've got people who are libertarian and independent. We've got people who are religious and secular. We've got those who are pro-life, pause, and pro-choice in the room right now. How's that feel? How's that feel? We've got people who are DEI allies and people who are very critical of DEI. We've got those who are fossil fuel executives in the movement. I know a couple of them. And these are people who actually believe in the moral case for fossil fuel, as crazy as that might sound to some of you. And we've got people who say we need to get to renewable and we need to get rid of fossil fuel. But if we don't have access to cheap, reliable power, the developing world can't join us in modernity, and so this is another complex tension. I want both of these poles in the conversation because energy is an adaptive problem. We can't just get rid of the fossil fuel executives and demonize them. We need them in partnership helping to solve the problem with those that are moving to renewables. And I have a number of clients who are CEOs of fossil fuel companies who are huge proponents of renewable energy and are trying to figure out how to make the transition in a way that's reliable and that's economically feasible and not idealistic. So this is complexity. All right, this is one of my favorites. We've got people here who want to protect what's right in America. I want to protect what's right in America, and we've also got people in this room, in this tent online, who want to fix what's wrong with America. And this is called a dialectic academically. This is the thesis, America's great, American exceptionalism, and the antithesis. No, there's things that are wrong. The civil rights movement was the antithesis to the status quo. And they bang into each other, and they bang into each other. And you're like, well, which one of them is right? They're both doing what they have to do to progress and evolve society. And eventually what happens, like tectonic plates banging into each other, what eventually happens is that a verticality, a mountain will come up, and that's called the higher order synthesis. I don't normally go behind the curtain and say that. I normally just call it higher ground. But it's thesis, antithesis, higher order synthesis, higher ground. This is the part of it. Now, do more good has a unifying mission that actually says, even though with all of this diversity, inside of all of this, there is something that unifies us. And this is educating, empowering, and amplifying the goodness of business. Right? This is the work. This is the work ahead. And so, we're going to go into our next poll. And before we do that, I want to read a Rumi. We had several poets up here today. An awakened human being realizes that the other person is never the problem. The other person is never the problem. And when we get hijacked, when we get angry, when we get frustrated, when we get emotional, and we say, she made me angry, he made me angry. No, she didn't. No, he didn't. You, me, we, in those moments are angry and maybe, not very resourced and have lost our temper because we have no other way to be in relationship with what's going on than to feel angry. When I get angry, and when I get frustrated, when I get anxious, if I actually was capable of not being angry and frustrated, I wouldn't be angry and frustrated. It is a reflection of my own leadership edge, my own human edge. I just don't have the capacity to be in that dynamic without feeling reactive. And so this is my work as a leader. Jade said, awareness creates choice. And with awareness and choice, we have responsibility. So I am learning, and do not think I have this figured out. I am learning how to take more responsibility for my own judgment, anger, frustration, ridicule. I'm just learning. I don't have to give up my discernment. I don't have to give up saying, that's unhealthy, that's healthy, that needs to have consequences, this needs to be bounded. We can do all of those things without getting hijacked emotionally. Thank you, Rumi. These are we've been working on this for thousands of years, right? Human beings, thousands of years that we know about since 6,000, 8,000 years of culture, and we keep going back. The Stoics, we keep going back. The same challenges. We're moving and evolving, but it's a slow process. So, let's go into our freedom tentpole. So there's 3 freedoms. I'm going to do these relatively quick because we've got a great video for you guys to watch and have a quick conversation about. The first one is free markets, voluntary exchange. Welcome to the tent. Free markets is a fundamental expression of capitalism, and it's a fundamental part of the Do More Good movement and the tent. We have free speech. We want to create an opportunity, not just here, but at all the kinds of gatherings that Do More Good has done and will continue to do. And those gatherings that you will do on your own, we want to actually have iron sharpening iron. We want to have differing viewpoints. We want people to feel that they can express their opinion and disagreements in a respectful way where we actually get the benefit of different perspectives and different angles. This is part of diversity of viewpoint. And then also free association. We want to be able to associate with those people that we want to associate with. Now, we also need to have the recognition that we should not discriminate, right? Discrimination happens. It's real. It's a shadow. It's a big shadow. And where discrimination is, we need to do our best to reduce it. It'll always be there, but to reduce it. But we have the opposite of that, which is the freedom to associate with who we want to associate with. So, I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. Evelyn Beatrice Hall was the biographer for Voltaire. And if you're like, Rand, that's Voltaire. No, it's not. That is his biographer's interpretation of his life. And she wrote this, and this is attributed to her. I may not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. And when cancel culture suppresses people's right to talk, Jay Bhattacharya is a medical doctor and an economist at Stanford, and he's now running the National Institute of Health. He is one of the most impressive public figures in the health sphere I have ever come across. And in 2020 and 2021, he started to just put out the possibility around, he was a co-author of the Great Barrington Declaration around COVID, and he just started putting out different points of view on COVID, and he was throttled down, and he was shut down, he was deplatformed on multiple social media channels. That's what happens when you say you don't have the right to say that. I don't like hate speech. I don't like it. I don't like when people are vulgar and mean and bullying, but the reality is that that's part of free speech, right? It is what it is. And this is how our country was formed, and this is how our country, if we can find our way up, not forward, up, this is what we're going to rediscover in a contemporary context, and recognizing that we don't want to, and I want to be very clear, the traditionalists want to restore the past. Do you guys get that? The conservatives just want to go back to the past. I'm not advocating we go back to the past. The progressives idealistically want to bring us into a future that has never existed. So there's nothing to point to and say, we want to be like that culture or that country, because it is an idealistic edge. And the achievers just want to be data driven. Just give me the data, right? And so every one of these have something to contribute, because we need some idealism, we need some data, and we need to rediscover the healthy parts of our past that need to go with us into the future and leave behind the unhealthy parts of our past. All right, here we go. We're going into the last pillar and the juiciest pillar. So this one is dynamic tension. You have a rubber band in front of you. Please pull that rubber band out real quick. Sorry for those who are online, but you can follow along and just watch what we're doing. Everyone go ahead and stretch the rubber band. This right here is called tension. If I stretch too far, don't do that. The rubber band will break. That's an unhealthy tension. That's not creative tension, it's dysfunctional tension. JD said something from his submarine days this morning. He said, without friction, there is no movement, and without tension, there is no growth. Tension is where the energy is. Guys, this is where it is. When I'm disagreeing with someone, what do I want to do? I want to relieve. Everyone relieve the tension. I want to relieve the tension. I relieve the tension, the energy's gone. The energy for change, growth, and transformation is gone. Bring the tension back out. There's the energy again. We have to learn as leaders to have a different relationship to disagreement and to tension and to a diversity of viewpoints. Because if we keep reducing the tension, cancel that person, deplatform that person, shut that person up, we don't actually get the productive distress of creative tension. So we're going to end with this quote and a video. This is Eckhart Tolle. Accept, then act. Whatever the present moment contains, accept it as if you had chosen it. Always work with, not against it. Make it your friend and ally, not your enemy. This will miraculously transform your whole life. When I get triggered, when I find myself triggered around a person or a thing, I used to make it and externalize it and project it about that person or thing. And now I have such gratitude. And I say, wow, I'm not equipped to relate with what's going on. And I'm going to stay in the tension. I'm going to be curious. Why am I so defensive? Why am I so reactive? I have a lot of reactivity. What's that about? This person is my teacher. She's in my life right now, in the dojo of my life, to teach me something. He's right here as a teacher. The people who, when we're in their presence, we are the most frustrated and our least resourceful selves are our greatest teachers, and we can be grateful for them to be in our lives, for God putting them in our lives. This is spiritual work. All right, Heineken commercial. Quick commercial. This is real. These are not actors. And let's go ahead and play the film. Oh, Our AV team is going to play the film inside. You don't even need to click it. You just, the next slide, go to slide 34, it's right in there. And just, you guys click it once. I won't touch one more time. Okay.
I would describe my political views as the new right.
I'd say that I'm left.
Feminism today is man-hating.
I would describe myself as a feminist, 100%.
I don't believe that climate change exists.
We're not taking enough action on climate change.
I think it's about time these people got off the high horse and started looking for credible problems that actually exist.
It's absolutely critical that trans people have their own voice.
That's not right. You can't, you're a man, be a man, or you're a female, be a female.
Women do need to remember that we need you to have our children.
Could I be friends with someone that says a woman's place is in the home?
Right, okay, well, I'm an expert at flat packs. If you have any trouble, just watch me.
So it looks like I've got your instructions here.
I think so.
Let me help you.
It's not just that bit there.
Describe what it is like to be you in 5 adjectives.
Okay, frustrating.
Dedicated.
Opinionated.
Lucky.
Ambitious.
Offensive.
Solemn. I have ups and downs.
Strong.
I don't want to say attacked. Misunderstood.
Name 3 things you and I have in common.
We're both male, we're both confident, and we're both loudly spoken.
We know each other better than people who've known each other for 10 minutes should.
You seem quite ambitious and positive, and you've got this really, got a glow. Do you know what I'm saying? Your aura's pretty cool.
I'm sensing, are you former military or something?
People have said that, but there is no history. So are you then ex-military?
Yeah.
If you're ex-military, I'm very proud of you already.
Well,
So
I grew up in a bit of a rough state. I've experienced homelessness. I've known what it's like to have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm definitely most grateful just for life.
We've only just met, but I think you're the sort of person that would listen to me and we'd have a discussion rather than argue.
Yeah, you could hang out with, man.
let's go. My chance.
Goodness sake.
You're right, mate.
Fitter than I look.
Perfecto.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
So basically, I think we just built a bar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here. Each take a bottle and place it on its corresponding markings on the bar.
Attention, please now stand to watch a short film.
Feminism today is definitely an excuse for misandry, man-hating.
If somebody said to me that climate change is destroying the world, then I'd say that is total piffle.
So transgender, it is very odd. We're not set up to understand or see things like that.
I am a daughter, a wife. I am transgender.
I feel like the battle for feminism definitely isn't done. The fight is never going to be over, if I'm honest with you.
You now have a choice. You may go, or you can stay and discuss your differences over a beer.
I'm only joking.
You had me for a second then.
Well, I'm having a drink.
I'm having a drink.
Yeah.
I want to discuss.
Beer.
Yeah, beer and discuss.
Cheers.
At the end of the day, mate,
About
I've enjoyed
reaching out to
working
people,
with you.
yeah. And, even if you wanted to convince people about your point, the productive thing to do would be to sit down and have a
Just
beer.
engage.
I've been brought up in a way where everything's black and white, but life isn't black and white.
Yeah, I'm just me.
Yeah.
Smash the patriarchy.
I'll give you my mobile number, you give me yours, and we'll keep in touch. I'd have to tell my girlfriend that I'll be texting another girl. She might be a bit upset with that, but I'll have to get round that.
I'll have to tell my girl that
She'll have to lump it.
So, yeah. I called the chief marketing officer of Heineken, had a conversation, got permission to share this video when I showed it at Conscious Capitalism a few years ago, and I learned about the study, and these are not actors, this is real. Obviously, they had more people doing this experiment than those that they chose, so the average person isn't up for that. This is what people will call BS and be like, Rand, come on, that's not the average person. Exactly. The average person doesn't have the capacity to do what those exceptions did. And we need to be the exception. We need to learn how to have a different relationship with our anxiety and our tension. We need to learn to see the human being on the other side. Gandhi once said, if you don't see God in the face of the next person you see, look no further. This is spiritual work. This is human work. And this is the work of leadership. And so I leave you with this last statement. Do you have the will to lead and not press the easy button? Do you have the will to lead and not hit the easy button? This is hard work, and it's going to take a really long time. And we need to do it not because we're going to be the beneficiaries, because we're probably not, but the next generation or the generation after that is who we're here to ultimately serve inside this movement. This is a do more good challenge. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to our do more good leader, and he's going to close us. So thank you guys so much.